Welcome to the DTF Printing Podcast. I'm Adrienne Palmer, Editor-in-Chief of DTF Printing. I'm here with Ian Hinkley, co-founder of DGI Apparel. Today, we're going to learn all about the free online tool that allows users to compare custom pricing from garment suppliers. Plus, we'll get into the current blank apparel needs by print shops and how DTF Printing is a huge win for all blank apparel providers. Hey, Ian, thanks for joining the podcast. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on. How are you doing today?
Great. I'm really excited to talk about DGI Apparel. But first, I really want to learn more about your background in the apparel decoration space and how you got your start in the industry.
Yeah, so I actually started as a screen printer in high school. And the story kind of goes, my 8th grade teacher, the year after I finished middle school and went on to high school, he left teaching and wanted to start a small business. So he bought like a screen printing business in town. And I wasn't aware of this, but I was running the student section for like the football games at my high school, and we needed to get t-shirts for the student section. So I went in to do the order, and I was like, oh, Mr. Boreati, like, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, this is my business now. And I needed a job for the summer. So long story short, I went back the next day and asked if I could have a job, and then kind of did everything you do when you're first starting at a shop. So the first 2 months was just cleaning screens. I'd go in twice a week and you like deal with all the chemicals and repurpose the screens. And then I moved on to where I was able to actually heat press onto t-shirts and then do some really simple screen printing and then loading and then eventually artwork and then finally like ordering and purchasing and working directly with the customers by the time I was like a senior in high school. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth and learned. It wasn't a full-time gig, but I got to do like everything in the shop. And he was really nice about just letting me try stuff out and learn while I was there.
That's really cool. And so you did that for a couple years during high school, but then you made a big jump and you went to MIT. So apparel decoration maybe wasn't really part of your long-term goals, but can you talk a little bit about how you went to MIT, what your majors were, and how you got into apparel decoration again?
Yeah. So I got into MIT, and I think basketball helped a little bit with that one. So they can't just get you in for athletics like in some other schools, but the coach can write a letter of recommendation. And that maybe helps a little bit. I think like 20% of the applicants that he writes for end up getting in onto the team. So it's better than the like 2% or crazy rate that the general public has. And that was honestly like a great experience. The first 2 years were really hard, like coming from like a public school in North Carolina, then ramping up to top tier academic level. I had a lot of like ground to cover, I think, and it was really difficult. I didn't like winters in Boston. That was like a little depressing at times. But I enjoyed playing basketball there. I ended up graduating with a double major in mechanical engineering and business management. And then I also snuck in like an anthropology minor just because I loved like learning about the cultures, and we had cool professors in that department. And throughout like over Christmas break or like on the weekends over summers, whenever I was back home, I would still go back to the shop and work with Mr. Boreati. So he'd be like text me and be like, hey, you in town? Like we have a huge order. Can you come in early on a Saturday? And I'd go like knock out, 400 shirt order or something like that for him. And in return, I would get to make custom t-shirts for the basketball team every year and get to use all the equipment in the shop. So I kind of stayed around the industry and was always floating in and out and like helping him out. Over COVID, when we had to move back home and people couldn't walk into the store, he hired me on the weekends to like drive around and drop off shirts all around town. So we have like a great relationship, and I just kind of like always enjoyed being around the shop. And I didn't know exactly where I was going to end up after college or finishing MIT, but I knew I enjoyed being around there.
That's really interesting. And it shows the relationship that you had with your professor really elevated, your relationship with him, working at the shop, high school and in college. Do you feel like it's really important for students who maybe are interested in art or science or math or something like that? What's the connection there with apparel decoration and being able to have that job during high school, college? We're finding that people seem to be aging out a little bit, and there's definitely need for people to know that screen printing even exists, because I'm not sure maybe you even would have known about it too much without that teacher in high school.
Yeah, I think it's something where if you can get kids turned on to this industry at an early age, it's something that they can kind of grow in and develop. And like I said, I just kind of fell backwards into the industry. It wasn't something that I planned to do. Like my parents never told me anything about it. So I wasn't necessarily gonna grow up to be in a shop. But I think it's something where there's a lot of different ways that you can find your way into this industry, whether you're working in the front office and you're doing artwork, if you like working in the back and you like working with your hands, if you like working with customers, like it's a very customer service based industry and you like talking to people, like there's room for you in the industry. And I do know, at least in New York, there's like a couple programs where they bring in high school students and they teach them how to print, how to, build out their own artwork, which softwares they can be using. And so I think programs like that are helpful. And also it's just like, even if you don't end up working in the industry full time, it's cool to have this like creative outlet where there's some kind of connection when you like have an idea for a t-shirt and then all of a sudden you're wearing the t-shirt and you're like, this is so cool. Like you have ownership over it and it's exciting and it's kind of fun to be able to bring stuff to life that way. Even if, it doesn't translate to working in the industry, I think it can kind of give you ownership to like take something from idea to actual product once you get out into the real world as well.
Absolutely. And there's always a nice benefit to knowing someone or working closely with a print shop that you can print all your fun, ideas. And if you're taking that back to your basketball team and just having that opportunity to have that creative outlet. So when you were working with your teacher turned boss / print owner, was he ever complaining about apparel decoration in terms of I'm trying to work with this blank apparel provider and the prices are this way, or was that any influence into DGI Apparel, your communication with him?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I don't think it ever really set in with me until I was moved up to the front office and I was doing a lot of the ordering. And so we had, accounts with all the major vendors. And then we had a really good relationship with the people at Carolina Made out of Charlotte, because they could one day ship to us. And the process was kind of like, the sales could change overnight sometimes. And so even if you checked yesterday for one garment, it could be different price today. The stock may need, Bobby, what you think it is. And so there were a lot of times where you have all the windows open, and then you have the notepad, or I would have the notepad, and you like go there, you jot down everything, and then you can go back and like add to cart and actually shop. And it was one of those things where we just kind of assumed that's the way it was. We didn't have any ideas for a way to make it better, and it wasn't like the worst thing ever. Like our biggest problems were probably still customers not paying their invoices on time, and employees maybe not being as organized because the other guys working in from the high school, and they would have to like miss days here and there. But it's like a problem that unless you sat in the seat and had to do it, I don't think you would come across, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So we're bearing the lead a little bit here. Can you tell our listeners what exactly DGI Apparel is and really how it came to be from your entire journey with apparel decoration from high school to now?
Yeah. So DGI Apparel is a purchasing platform that's completely free for custom apparel shops to use. And so what it's designed for is procuring your blank t-shirts. So whatever decorating method you may have, you still need to order your blanks from one of your suppliers. And so DGI supports most of the major vendors in the US. I think we're up to 7 now. And you'll go on to DGI and you'll connect your actual account to DGI Apparel. So you'll just enter your username and password, and we encrypt those using the AWS encryption service that it's like the same stuff that like Netflix and all those big companies built on top of AWS use. And my 2 roommates, Grant and Daniel, who are the D and the G in DGI, are really good software engineers and recommended this technique. And then once you connect your account, what that enables is, one, you can see your own custom pricing from every vendor. You can see the live inventory. A lot of times you need to be logged in to see inventory. Cart management. So if you want to add stuff to your cart, you can do that directly on DGI, and then even checking out. So if you have like net terms or something like that, those will show up on DGI as well. And so kind of how it works is we have what we think is the largest combined catalog in the industry, and you search by style number or category or brand or something like that. And then the results show up and you'll see all the price points there, all the inventory levels, all the estimated shipping times. So you're not toggling back and forth between all the websites, and you're able to just kind of keep things all in one centralized dashboard.
It seems like an amazing system. And I know just from talking to other apparel decorators when we were together at DTF Expo, for example, people really are very excited about this. What have current customers said so far? Are they finding it easy to use? Are they seeing anything drastically change in whether what they're purchasing prior to using this system?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess the first thing is that they do say it's easy to use. We tried to make it really simple. Daniel, who acts as like our chief product officer on a team of 3, you can make up titles and say whatever you want to say. But he is actually like very sensitive to the user's product experience. And like, I'll notice sometimes we're talking about the website. He's like, no, their eyes are going to go here first. And then they're going to be thinking about this information. And here's the story we're telling. And so I think we've tried to be very cognizant when we're building DGI Apparel of not overloading them with a lot of information that they don't need, or if there is a lot of information, making sure it's presented in the order that you're thinking. So it's like, search by style number, and then you narrow down to your color. And then it's like, do they actually carry that color? Okay, can I get it shipped here in time? Because if, I don't care what it costs if I can't get it shipped in time. And then you can kind of look at price point from there. And so I think having him on the team has been really cool in terms of just trying to keep it simple, trying to keep it straightforward to use. And we're always getting feedback from customers or I guess users, since it's free, on how we can make it a little bit better. Or sometimes we'll like have a feature that we think is really cool and then people just don't know about it. So we try to keep it really simple. In terms of how it's changed their purchasing habits, from what we can tell, it hasn't changed it a ton. I think it's just made it faster. Like you're able to get the information you need much more quickly. You're able to kind of make your decision more quickly. You feel more confident. That's the other thing that we get a lot is like, sometimes people may have a vendor account that they just never check, and now they're at least able to see it. So they feel very confident when they're using DGI. And so that's kind of the biggest thing we've gotten is like it's speed, confidence. It's a little bit simpler to use. Also, if you're like new to the industry, you may not remember off the top of your head which supplier carries which or distributor carries which brands. And so you go through and you check all the websites and realize you're wrong until the last one, versus now you can just search once. But I don't think it's changing exactly what people buy too frequently. Maybe they get surprised and there was a sale that they wouldn't have known about or caught. But I think it's more so the time saving and the confidence. And that's really what we wanted to come through with DGI.
Yeah, it's a very streamlined approach. Now, in your cart and in the purchasing sector, can you purchase from multiple accounts, or do you have to make a decision based off of one blank apparel provider? How does that work in terms of like at the end of the day, am I going to have 10 different shipping, tracking numbers that I need to pay attention to? Is it coming from different places? How does that work?
Yeah. So right now you do check out individually with each of the vendors. And so that's still just grouped into like, one PO per order, sent out to that distributor or the supplier. And that is something that we want to get to next. Like, I don't really want to touch a lot of the shop management stuff. I think it's like, I don't understand everyone's systems and processes, and like Printavo has already done a really good job in that space. But in terms of just like sitting there and ordering, the next step is how you're receiving these packages. So we want to kind of build out like a history page where you can just see where each of your packages are at a given time. And then the next one would be like, okay, which customer invoices are associated with these boxes that are coming into my store? Because you probably have seen this, and I know we had it all the time, where the UPS guy pulls up and they have like 6 hand carts of boxes. And now we're like, great, I don't know what's for what order. Like I have to go open up every single one, count them, stack them, like fold them up again, put them back in the box. And so it'd be really nice. The next step I think would be just to help with like receiving the orders for us, but it's not built yet. We mostly just speed up like your purchasing workflow. And then we want to get to that probably in some point this summer.
Well, you just launched this in October of last year, right?
Yeah, we did. And so we started on it in the first week of August. And we put it out to like my old boss, and then another guy in New York that owns like one of the big frogs in New York City, and he's been really helpful for us. And it was really, really rough. Like it only supported 2 suppliers. There were no product images. There were no color swatches. You had to click on like the word red or the word green. It took like 8 seconds for the prices to come in. And he texted us the first day after we went in and got it set up. And he's like, I actively tried to use your product today, and it wasn't nearly as inconvenient as I thought it would be. And that was our first testimonial. And it's gotten better from there. But yeah, so official launch was in October, and then it's been, I guess, 5.5 months since then. So it's flying by.
Yeah, that it definitely is flying by, especially because I mean, I know you've been to Long Beach Impressions, you've been to DTF Expo, you've really been trying to get the word out just over this short amount of time. But you mentioned you already have what 100 plus users so far, and a lot of the blank
Yeah.
apparel providers are already involved. So it seems like you're getting the word out there. Is there another way that you're trying to navigate getting users and also working with blank apparel providers?
Yeah. We've tried like Facebook groups has honestly been a really good channel for us. People are always going to these Facebook groups to look for feedback, and you will have like the occasional troll in there. It's like this is a scam, like they're just trying to steal your money. But now that we have some actual users in these groups that use us and know about it, they usually like come to our defense and they're like, "No, I know Ian and the DGI team. Like they're really helpful. Like check it out." Um, and then like really we haven't tried a ton of other things besides just going to conferences and talking to people and then hopping in these Facebook groups. What we really want to make sure is everyone that does make an account on DGI and connect their vendors and start shopping is really happy. So like everyone gets like a custom DGI card sent out to them. If you signed up recently and you haven't gotten yours yet, I'm sorry, snail mail that's the snail part of it. Um, but yeah, so we've been trying to kind of get the word out a few different ways, and hopefully the listeners for the DTF Printing podcast will also find it interesting, and a few people can sign up as well.
And speaking of signing up, that is how you find out what major vendors in the US and other regional distributors are available. So you do have to sign up, even though it is free, you do have to sign up to find that little secret out. But can you tell us what it's been like working with these companies and getting them on board to begin with?
Yeah, so we actually haven't heard a ton from the really large distributors, and we've talked to them here and there, and they're just kind of like, whatever. These are just some kids working on like a little project, and like I think it's just because we don't really move the needle for them. Like these people are really busy, and that they're dealing with millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. Like I just think it's not that important to them. But we do have really good relationships with a lot of the regional distributors that we're bringing onto the website. And I think they're finding it really helpful. It's making sure they get the word out about, the products that they offer. We're trying to find ways to help, they kind of differentiate themselves through really good customer service. So trying to bring that through the platform and making sure it's easy for a customer to talk to their rep at one of these distributors as well. And then actually we've just signed a deal to bring on AS Color, who is a direct to printer brand. Who doesn't, I think, sell through any distributor channels right now, but they want to list on DGI Apparel, so that should be live starting at the first week of April.
Congrats.
So yeah, it's been really good. It's interesting to see. I just kind of knew the problems that the shop owners had, and so I'm learning a little bit more of like how are these larger companies or these distributors trying to get in contact with their customers, make sure you're finding the right item for the right customer at the right time, and so it's kind of fun to kind of balance both sides of that as well.
Yeah. Well, what I found just with DTF printing being so new and young is that there are a lot of new business owners who really don't even know where to begin. So, for you were local and you knew, you had someone local that you could work with. And that's really much what you were doing in high school and with the print shop in North Carolina. There are a lot of DTF printers who really don't know where to begin. And this seems like a great starting point. But do they have to know those companies before? So if they're pulling in their own, systems and everything, and it's getting connected to DGI Apparel, is there still an opportunity for them to find out everyone that's listed there once they've signed up?
Yeah. So once you make an account on DGI Apparel, you can see all the vendors that we support, and like I said, we're adding a few. We should have 10 or 12 on there by the end of the year, hopefully. So that should cover like 90% of the volume in the US. If you don't have an account with one of those vendors, you can't see any of the product information that they carry. We're not there to kind of display anything that should be behind a paywall. You can't see anyone else's prices. Like we're not there to help you negotiate or be like a purchasing group or anything. It's really just a tool that kind of augments the amount of work you have to do to get the information you need to make a decision. But hopefully one of the things that comes out of it is if you have been on the fence about adding a new vendor, and you're like, oh, well, I don't want to worry about a new account and a new website and like a new catalog to learn, DGI should make it a lot easier for you to have that option for adding new distributors that we support as well.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you think that there are any wholesale suppliers or blanket apparel manufacturers that are concerned by this software at all? Or do you think that are they maybe worried about what that has to do with their companies, or do they find it to be a benefit too?
I think anyone that doesn't see it as beneficial maybe just doesn't fully understand it yet. I think they're used to dealing with like these large purchasing groups and other platforms where they kind of negotiate, like they bring on a bunch of users and they negotiate, and then those users purchase through their platform. And that's not really what DGI is. It's just a software layer essentially to help you get the information you need to make a decision. So we did have a couple of people ask us early on. They're like, "Oh my God, this is going to be a race to the bottom, and all of us are, margins are going to get pushed down to zero and maybe even negative." And I think the first thing is to realize that when we talk to a lot of users and we do a ton of user interviews to make sure people like it, pricing is usually like the second or third thing that they consider. Like it's usually like, do you have the thing that my customer wants? Which like either you have it or you don't. It doesn't matter if you're on DGI. And then can you get it to me as fast as I need it? If the customer has like a 2-week lead time, maybe you can wait for 2 or 3 days shipping. But if you need to get it that week, then it's really just based on proximity. And then after that, then like price can be a tiebreaker. But also there's like, sometimes we'll see it's the same item, the same shipping time, and they'll still buy the more expensive one. We're like, "Why'd you do that?" They're like, "Oh, well, I get rebates at the end of the year with this vendor." And so that's the other like benefit of DGI is you're connecting your own account. So if you're working towards like rewards at the end of the year, you have like a spending minimum that your rep wants you to hit to keep your pricing tier, you still have that great relationship with them. It's just, augmenting the amount of work you have to do to make those decisions.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that this will affect how blanket apparel decorators price items? Do you think that they'll be on there kind of like checking out other vendors, or do you think then obviously we don't want that to be like a race to the bottom. We talked a lot about that, and even at DTF Expo. But do you think that this is going to affect their thought process at all?
I think a little bit, but I think in ways that'll be helpful for the industry as a whole. Like realistically, shirts are already a commodity item. Like, it's hard to differentiate. Like AS Color has decided specifically they want to sell direct, and they go for like the higher end stuff. But a lot of these other suppliers, whether they be manufacturers or distributors, they do have a lot of the same items between them, or really comparable items. And so like the switching cost for a user used to just be like switching tabs and checking and going to the next one, versus now it's a little bit easier. I don't know. And when we talk to users, they're not that concerned about price that often. Like sometimes they get surprised because someone will be having a sale going on that they didn't know about, and they're like, "Oh, this is great to catch." Like I usually don't check Atlantic Coast Cotton's website, but now here they are, and this is a great price on this one item that I need today. But I'd imagine that if it was gonna happen where they just kind of race to zero margins, it already would have. Like if some vendor is gonna be cheaper on every single item every single time, people are gonna find out about it and they're gonna just shop from that one. So the difference of a few cents really means nothing. Like if you're doing a 100 t-shirt order and there's a 4-cent difference, you're honestly, I would recommend that you give it to whichever vendor you have a better relationship with, because it's only $4, and like maintain that relationship is much more valuable than those $4. So maybe it'll move things around a little bit. But like, I don't think we're making, huge waves. We're not negotiating. The other thing is like you said, other vendors going on there to check everyone else's prices. Like everyone ends up with their own custom pricing tier at the end of the day. So they might not be checking the price that everyone else is paying for that item on a different vendor as well. So it's really important to note that you don't see someone else's pricing. Like you can only see your custom pricing. It's just meant to speed up the information that's available to you already.
Yeah. You mentioned a few people in this Facebook group saying it's a scam. They're just trying to get, our money, whatever, but it's free. So why is DGI Apparel free?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons for that. One is we asked people for money early on, and they were like, I don't really know. Like, I think I'll just switch between the websites. And so we were like, okay, if we're ever going to make money on this, we may need to find a different business model. And the other part of it is it seemed more fun for us to do something that was just really accessible and could help a lot of people in the industry, and then to figure out the business model later. And I'm guessing you were going to ask about this a little bit later on, but we're in like an accelerator now. So we got a little startup investment from them. And so that was able to kind of cover our costs just to get off the ground and get moving. And the goal that they kind of gave us too was just get people on, see if they like it, and figure out how to monetize later. And so that's kind of where we are. We've looked at, we can do sponsorships. Like a few brands may want to be on there while people are shopping, so that way they're more noticeable when people are making their purchasing decision. And then there's some other software players in the space. So like Printavo, we've talked about some kind of way we could integrate. And then like with your QuickBooks, so you can make your accounting a little bit more easy. And we could charge for those integrations. But we wanted to keep just like connecting your vendors and shopping free, and just see if we could kind of like help make the industry better.
That's awesome. Okay, talk a little bit about the accelerator. So typically you're based in New York, but you're in San Francisco right now because you're in an accelerator program. What does that look like in terms of applying for the program? And what does your day-to-day or every other day look like when you're in San Francisco with this team?
Yeah, so the accelerator is called Y Combinator. And if you go online, you can see there's a lot of other really big companies that have come out of there. There's like, Stripe and Instacart and DoorDash and Airbnb have all kind of started there. But it's interesting. Those are kind of the standouts, but there's also this thousands of other companies that have gone through. And the slogan at Y Combinator is make something that people want. And that's really what we're focused on, is just trying to understand, like, what is a problem that people have? Maybe you know about it from experience, or you've heard about it, and how can you like come up with a solution for that problem? And so that's like the main focus. Like, in some cases you solve a problem and people are willing to pay a lot of money for it. And other times you solve a problem and you may not end up getting super rich, but it's a cool problem to have solved and like put out into the world. And so that's kind of the biggest thing we've taken from it. We have group partners that we meet with every week. And so these are all former founders that have started a company and sold it and done really well. And they just like, enjoy being around startups and teams that are like young and hungry and trying to like do cool things. So they give us advice and try to help us understand, hey, here's a good way that you can reach out and find more users. Here's, if you're having a problem where people are complaining about this certain feature on your website, here's like a potential solution you can try that worked well for us while we were building our companies. So yeah, it's been really, really cool to kind of be in this ecosystem. And like, there are a few teams where I'm like, you guys are going to end up being really, really rich. But I don't think we're in that position. I think it's just like a problem that we wanted to solve, and maybe we'll find a good way to monetize it eventually.
Yeah, it's cool to be a part of that, especially with people who have been so successful, and also kind of just bouncing off ideas from people who are doing something similar to you right now. But you mentioned that they're looking for people who have had experience. So I'm guessing that your experience in the screen printing shop in high school and in college was probably a good little, bonus point on your application process, because that's kind of what they're looking for. Someone who has had experience, found an issue, and they're looking for a solution.
Yeah, I think that's kind of like when we talk to a lot of the other teams, people have had, firsthand real world experience with the problem. Like there's another marketplace for used firefighting equipment, and the guy who did it was like a firefighter all throughout high school, and then ended up going to like a big school and having like a high paying job. And he's like, no, I want to start this and solve this problem. And so I think that's kind of the trend that I see a lot of times, is they want you to have like real experience with the problem. And then on top of that, like Grant and Daniel are world-class engineers. Like they were working at big companies and decided that they wanted to pursue this and work on it with me, which has been really fun because we're, best friends from college. So we just get to like hang out all day and kind of work. Like our laptops are open, but we're hanging out. But yeah, so I think the firsthand experience helps a lot. And there was also another MIT basketball alum that had gone through the program like 7 or 8 years back. And so he was able to send an email, and that might have helped the application a little bit as well.
Nice. A lot of angel investors, accelerators, these types of startup programs, they're typically looking for companies that have already made money or can prove that they're going to make money. What's the difference here where DGI Apparel isn't really making money and doesn't necessarily have plans to, other than you mentioned maybe some advertising sponsorship? What's the benefit to them at the end of the day as hosts of this program?
Right, because they need to see returns on their investments. I realistically think that we explained kind of the size of the market, and a lot of people in the tech world don't see how big the custom apparel industry or like promotional products industry as a whole is. And so I was like, yeah, like promotional products is like a $26 billion a year industry. Like there's a lot of like problems that we can solve here and like potentially a lot of volume that could go through the website. And so first of all, they doubted me and I was like, well, when's the last time you like bought a custom t-shirt or screen printed t-shirt? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, now everyone in the country does that all day, every day. Like it ends up being a big market. So I think they see potential where if we can really solve a problem and make something a lot easier for people, then we can find some way to make money. And so that's kind of what we're focusing on right now. And like while you're in the program and in the incubator, they're just focusing on like, you know, again, make something people want, like actually solve a real problem. And they kind of trust that if you're doing that, you're doing it well, then you can find a way to monetize later on, whether it be like a premium level for DGI where we like automate even more, integrate with something else, or ads, or find some better way to connect users to or customers to their suppliers. So I think there's a lot of room to create value, and eventually we can make some money. But it's not the first goal, and I really enjoy that about the culture at YC as well.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not that major pressure to be hitting a certain amount of capital by X date. You can just work on creating something that's needed, and I think that's really important. And I'm glad you're part of that program. So overall, as you're working through this, you know, what do you think your largest goal is in terms of affecting the industry with DGI Apparel?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's a lot of the confidence at the end of the day. Like I want people to feel confident that they're like finding the right, you know, garment or item from the right supplier at the right time, with as little friction as possible. Like everyone has different decorating methods and they have different things that kind of set them apart. They have different brands they prefer. They find their niche. Like, you know, I print the best pictures of people's dogs onto t-shirts, or I do graduation stoles or something like that. But at the end of the day, they need to have like the right raw materials to do that. And that was just like a problem that I saw. And so I want everyone to sit down and do their ordering process and feel like they got through it really quick. Say like, wow, that was super painless. That was super fast. I feel confident that I got, you know, the right deal from the right supplier. And now I can go back to working on my business instead of working in my business. And I would, whenever I get emails where someone tells me that that's kind of how DGI makes them feel and they've really enjoyed it, then that really like is motivating to me and the team to kind of keep moving in that direction. So that's really what I want to come out of it, is I just want these shop owners to feel really happy with the purchases they made, and to still have a great relationship with their suppliers while they're doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'm really excited to see, you know, where DGI Apparel goes. How long is the program? When will you have to wrap that up?
Yeah, so the program goes until April 10th, I believe, 12th, something like that. And then we're out here until April 25th. And then we drove out here in my like 1999 Pontiac grandma car, and then we'll drive back out through like Wyoming and stuff, back out to New York.
Oh, that's cool. So you'll have some stops along the way and enjoy your time on maybe like a couple week road trip.
Yeah, we did it in 4 days or so on the way out here, and so we stopped in like, you know, Daniel's from the Bronx, and so he's never been like west of like Pennsylvania or something. So we stopped in like Wyoming and Iowa and like Utah and stuff. So he's able to see some cool spots, and then we'll probably do similar stops on the way back. They just won't be covered in snow this time.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And as someone who lived in San Francisco for a couple of years, I'm so jealous of you living in SF right now. It's a really cool city, but you're living in New York too, so you're kind of getting the best of both worlds.
Yeah. And I guess before we wrap up too, it might be helpful to mention to everyone how awesome like the DTF Expo in Phoenix was a couple of weeks ago. I'm new to the space, and so I was still like trying to learn, and DTF was like a little foreign to me. It wasn't something that we used at the shop while I was in high school, and so it was like everyone there was really helpful, really smart, doing really cool stuff. And so Adrian and the team that put it together, you guys did a really, really awesome job, and I appreciate the effort that went into it.
Thanks, Ian. I really appreciate that. Yeah. What was your biggest takeaway from, you were just at Impressions Long Beach in January, and then you're now going to a very niche, super focused into DTF show. What did you think of, I don't know, the education sessions or just what we were talking about on the show floor?
Yeah, I guess for one thing is I was just impressed how far the technology has come since like when I was in high school, like starting as like a freshman or a sophomore. So this was 8 years ago now. Like the any DTF film that we got, it felt like really plasticky and it was like really heavy. And it was like we only used it if it was the arcade center down the street that wanted the absolute cheapest shirts to give people when they like redeem tickets. Um, and now seeing it where it's at now, like you can put it on a really nice shirt. The material is like stretchy. It almost feels like, you know, it's screen print where it's into the actual garment. It's much more resilient. So like stuff had like a 200 wash cycle lifetime on it, I was seeing. Um, and so I think the fact that it's come that far and you're not compromising on quality was something I was like, oh, this is like a huge opportunity, because we would have people come into the shop for us and say like, hey, I want 4 shirts with 6 colors. Can you turn this around by, you know, next week at this time? And we're like, I'm sorry, like I can't help you. Versus now that's an option. Like we can order film and be really happy with the quality that's coming out. Um, and then I think on top of that, just kind of learning more about where DTF printing was and like seeing, you know, the adoption and how many people are really getting into it. It was really interesting to kind of zoom all the way in on a very focused conference like that and see um, how technology is just kind of allowing these business owners to have new tools and serve their customers in better ways. And I think that's DTF is only going to become more prevalent. I don't know if everyone should run out and buy a machine right away, because it's a lot to maintain and you know cover the costs on. But find a good supplier for DTF. It's a good tool to have in like the back pocket. Is kind of what I took away. And like I called my old boss. I was like, hey, talk to these guys. Talk to these guys. Like now you can take on all those small orders we used to get.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you had that takeaway, and it is interesting because you don't have to purchase the equipment to get into the space. And so not everyone there was getting ready to buy a big machine or really dive in that way. Of course, there was a large group that were, but it's nice that there's different layers of entry points that you can get, you know, into DTF, and you can just find a supplier of transfers and have heat presses and print your shirts that way, which is awesome. And then you kind of touched on it. You know, one of the biggest benefits of DTF printing is you can print on all blank apparel types, you know, without having to pre-treat, or you can now, you know, DTF polyester. Do you think the growth and adoption of DTF printing is going to affect DGI Apparel at all?
Honestly, I think for one is because, like you said, you could print on any material. We might see a shift, you know, towards, you know, tri-blends and then polys a little bit more. The other thing is we might see more smaller orders that are kind of grouped up into the same PO, because they're able to, you know, service someone that only wants 8 t-shirts. It's something that's feasible. You don't have to set up, you know, 6 different screens to only run 8 shirts through, which is kind of where the receiving organization comes into it that I was mentioning earlier. Like you may send off one PO to the supplier and it comes in 2 boxes, but there's 12 customer orders in those boxes. And so that would kind of be something where, as we shift to having the possibility of a lot of these smaller orders, making sure that people are able to stay organized when those orders come into the store, I think would be something that will affect DGI and is something that we'll have to build for as time goes on. But it's good to be cognizant of that, and we'll learn more as kind of DTF continues to take over the space and be everywhere as we're seeing it.
For sure. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of blank apparel suppliers, manufacturers, they're changing their minimum order quantities. You know, you can just buy a t-shirt, which is what DTF is made for, in a sense, with the lower quantities. And also with, you know, Supercolor just announced that they have no minimum order quantities on transfers. So that, I think DTF is changing that, because people are just wanting those one-offs or a couple shirts, you know, here and there for an event. And that's going to, the trickle down effect for all the other players and providers in the industry, you know, they're going to have to change what they're offering as well. So yeah, I agree. I think that the lower orders, the smaller orders, you'll see that at DGI Apparel for sure.
Yeah. And that's something that had I not gone to the conference in Phoenix a couple weeks ago, I don't think I would have been aware of that shift in the industry. You know, just coming into it very recently, but now it's something that we're able to kind of be on the lookout for a little bit more and see when people are using it. Like, how much are you grouping up separate customer invoices into one PO from your supplier, and how big are these orders actually. So it's just kind of good to have on the radar, I think.
Okay. Well, Ian, is there anything else that before we go that you want to share about DGI Apparel? What you think is needed in the blank apparel space? Any other thoughts on DTF?
Yeah, I guess if you want to check out more about DGI Apparel, you can go to dgiapparel.com. And you can create an account. It takes, maybe 60 seconds to make an account with us. It's going to be completely free to use. We will not ask you for money ever. Like, we're not going to do a freemium model and come back and ask for anything. And go ahead and just connect your accounts, try it out, see if it's helpful. And if you have any feedback or you want any questions, if you scroll to the bottom of any page on the website, that's my cell phone number, so you can text or call me. And then also my personal email, and you can go straight to my calendar and book a demo. So I'm happy to help out there. In terms of DTF, I don't know if I'm necessarily an expert, but Adrian probably has a ton of different channels that you guys can check out, whether it be the DTF printing blog, more podcast episodes, whoever their partners are. And I would point all attention to Adrian if you want to learn a lot more about DTF printing.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, definitely. We have all kinds of resources at dtfprinting.com. And thanks just so much for sharing your history and your journey with the apparel decoration space. I think people like you who realize that there was this total industry that maybe you weren't aware of, learning about that in high school, going back to the shop, in college, and then really working toward finding solutions that are making it easier for people who already have to do a million things as a print shop owner. Being able to streamline and make something easier for someone is really going to affect the industry. So thanks for that. Also, I think, you're proof that people who get into the apparel industry at a young age, they can't really get out of it. So that just will bring more and more people to our awesome industry.
Yeah, can't get out of it, but also don't really want to get out of it. I enjoy everyone that I meet in the industry. So thanks again, Adrian.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great space to be in. All right. Well, thanks, Ian. We will catch you next time on the next episode of the DTF Printing Podcast. In the meantime, as Ian mentioned, head to dtfprinting.com to discover new ways to grow your print business. Thanks for listening.